is extraordinarily woke, as everyone is in Hollywood, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged. Like, you get cast for Snow White, and of course, if you are a business like Disney, you are leaning into what the movie Snow White meant to the people that were raised on it. People like me who watched Disney princess movies when the world was okay, and it was acceptable for us to dream about being a princess as a woman. And
Rachel Zegler gets absolutely destroyed by Candace Owens over woke Snow White disaster.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Disney's Snow White was supposed to be a magical hit, something that brought back childhood memories and made millions at the box office. But instead, it turned into a total mess before it even came out. And at the center of all the drama, Rachel Zegler, who somehow managed to make people mad at Snow White before anyone even saw it.
that's like, we just gotta be like men. Everything will be great once we just act exactly like men. There's nothing special about being a woman. Let's just be men. It just doesn't feel like we're winning. Anyways, so then they got even crazier, and they decided that the dwarves in Snow White weren't woke enough, okay?
From trashing the original story to calling the prince weird, Zegler made sure this movie had more drama off-screen than on. And just when things couldn't get any worse, Candace Owens jumped in and completely tore her apart. So, how did a fairy tale turn into a full-blown disaster? And why is everyone, including Candace Owens, calling this the biggest flop of the year? Let's get into it.
You guys have been following the never-ending scandal of Rachel Zegler, their Snow White remake princess, but this young woman is clearly mentally deranged, and she's now posted on her social media calling for Trump supporters to be harmed. Like, this is just not even normal. They've already had to delay this film because this woman can't close her mouth, and now she's, calling for violence?
It all started the moment the news dropped. Rachel Zegler had been cast as Snow White, and while some fans were excited, others weren't exactly thrilled. Sure, she could sing, and she had that fresh, new Hollywood shine, but this was Disney.
Disney picked her to be a princess, right? They're doing all these remakes, and they decided they were going to remake Snow White, and they cast Gal Gadot as the Wicked Witch, and they cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White, and it's been interesting casting because this woman is extraordinarily woke, as everyone is in Hollywood, but she's woke in a way that's...
People had an image in their heads. Snow White was supposed to have skin as white as snow. That was the whole point, right? Social media exploded with debates, some defending the casting, others furious over what they saw as an unnecessary change. But that was just the tip of the iceberg.
These big bad feminists now are telling us that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince and be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after? No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that.
Zegler wasn't just stepping into a classic role. She was stepping into controversy. As press for the film started, she made it clear that this wasn't going to be the Snow White people remembered. Gone was the dream of true love. Gone was the prince coming to the rescue. This wasn't a damsel in distress story anymore. For some, this was a refreshing update. For others, it felt like Disney was rewriting history just to fit a modern agenda. The original film came out in 1937, and yes, it had that old-fashioned fairy tale romance. But to many, that was what made it magical. Zegler, however, wasn't holding back. She even went as far as calling the prince a stalker. That didn't sit well with longtime Disney fans.
And it's such a weird thing for their whole pitch as feminists to be is like the best thing you can strive to be as a man. Like, I feel like feminists are actually the patriarchy. Like, they're just like, we just gotta be like men. Everything will be great once we just act exactly like men.
As if that wasn't enough, behind-the-scenes issues were already messing with the movie. The production had been delayed multiple times, a fire on set had caused massive damages, and costs were ballooning. Normally, stars play it safe in situations like this. Not Zegler. Instead of keeping things diplomatic, she leaned into the controversy, doubling down on her takes about Snow White's story being outdated. To some, it came across as confidence, but to others, it was straight up arrogance. fans were frustrated. This wasn't just any movie, this was Snow White, a film that helped build Disney into what it is today. People didn't want a complete overhaul, they wanted a fairy tale. The backlash wasn't just about Zegler's opinions, it was about the way she delivered them. There's a way to say you're excited about a fresh take on a beloved story, and then there's a way to make it sound like you're insulting everything that came before you. Zegler, unfortunately, seemed to be doing the latter. Clips of her interview started going viral, with fans accusing her of being disrespectful toward the original film. The internet doesn't forget, and soon, phrases like, "Not my Snow White," were trending, with people swearing off the movie before it even hit theaters.
And they decided to cast 7 non-dwarves. They released this picture behind the scene. So obviously you see they've got one dwarf, and then there's black people, and there's 3 black people, and maybe a redhead back there. Even crazier, like they were just like, it's to make it more progressive.
And then came the next blow, the dwarves, or more accurately, the lack of them. Instead of the iconic 7 dwarves, Disney decided to replace them with CGI magical creatures. Why? Because Peter Dinklage, a well-respected actor with dwarfism, called out Disney for what he saw as outdated representation.
I do feel like that's acceptable to just actually cast 7 dwarves. I don't feel like the dwarves are being cast in so many parts that would not be deemed woke enough, but apparently it was.
That set off a chain reaction, and before anyone knew it, the dwarfs were gone. This move didn't exactly go over well, especially among little person actors who had been looking forward to those roles. While Disney framed it as a step forward, many in the acting community felt robbed of opportunities. And just like that, another controversy was born. Zegler, never one to shy away from a debate, chimed in again. She praised the decision, celebrating the movie's supposed move toward inclusivity. But this only added fuel to the fire. Fans, actors, and industry insiders were all talking, and none of it was good. When leaked images of the CGI replacements surfaced online, things got even worse. Despite all this, production moved forward. But by the time 2024 rolled around and the movie was gearing up for its 2025 release, Zegler made headlines yet again. This time, it wasn't about Snow White at all. It was about politics. After the US election, she took to social media to express her feelings. And let's just say, they weren't subtle. She made it clear that she wasn't a fan of Trump supporters, posting comments that many saw as aggressive and divisive.
Must have some clause in there that she's not allowed to go out and just eliminate her entire audience by being a psychopath and by calling for harm and no peace for Trump supporters. I really do hope she gets dropped.
Disney now had a massive problem on their hands. The movie, which should have been a guaranteed hit, was now facing potential disaster at the box office. Longtime fans didn't want to support it, and casual moviegoers weren't sure it was worth the hype. The film's release had already been pushed back, and now, with all this backlash, some were even wondering if it would hit theaters at all. With all eyes on Disney, only time would tell if the studio could turn things around. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just another fairy tale. This was a Hollywood disaster in the making.
From the film, I think in the end they'll make more money if they drop her and replace her with someone else, and they will do if they go through with this. And if you are somebody who voted for Trump, or you're just someone who generally has good morals and principles, I would highly advise that you boycott this film. No matter how much your children love Snow White, no matter how much you love a Disney remake, this is not the film for you.
Now, Rachel Zegler had the opportunity of a lifetime to be the new face of Snow White, a character cherished by generations. Instead of embracing the role with gratitude and respect for the original story, she seemed to treat it with disdain, mocking the classic love story and dismissing the charm that made the original film so special. Rather than winning over fans, her words alienated them, making her seem arrogant, dismissive, and out of touch with what audiences actually wanted. At this point, the damage is done. The film is tainted, not just because of its changes to the classic story, but because its lead actress made it impossible for audiences to separate her from the character. When people think of this Snow White, they don't think of a magical fairy tale. They think of controversy, backlash, and bad press. Disney's attempt to reimagine the story has instead turned into an example of what happens when a studio loses sight of its audience. Whether the film succeeds or flops when it finally hits theaters in 2025 remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: this is not the Snow White fans wanted.